This is Kettering University.
My guess is you probably already know some of the facts, but you may not know some of the stories behind the facts. So I'll use my 5 minutes to tell you that. Here's the facts. This year, the growth of FIRST continues to be great around the country and around the world. If you include all the programs, we have more than 41,000 schools in 80 countries, which is pretty amazing. But the program that drives all the rest is FRC. It's by far the toughest, it's the gold standard. And the facts, and you probably already heard this, if you look at the growth of FIRST this year over last year, it turns out that we have a bunch of rookie teams. Of the few thousand schools in the US that are in FIRST Robotics, we had some growth, but here's something you should be proud of. The fact is, the number of new rookie teams at FRC, more than 80 of them, from the state of Michigan, the number of rookies from this one state is more than the sum total of all the rookies in all the other states combined, which is astounding. That's the fact. That's the fact. But here's the story behind the fact. We're at this now for more than a quarter of a century. And when I got this thing going, when it was still a crazy idea, I needed world-class engineers to help me grow this. And I'm sure many of you know that old saying, failure is an orphan, but success has many fathers and mothers. And what that says, lately, over the last few years, loads and loads of people I hear are the co-founders of FIRST. The fact is, you have to go back more than 20 years, and I met a guy named Francois Castang, who was a major engineering icon in the whole automotive industry, across all the companies, American Motors and Chrysler Motors and Daimler, and Tom Stevens, who over that time became, for instance, the vice chairman of General Motors and the head of engineering for General Motors, and Kettering University, which is sort of the poster child for automotive engineering. And by the way, thank you, Mr. President, for helping us here. But But the story behind the fact, it's not a coincidence. It is not a coincidence that this state is so outperforming the rest, because back around 20-something years ago, when I met Francois Castang and said we have to do this, long before the automotive industry had its big troubles, he knew that if we don't do something, that would happen. And he knew that the idea behind FIRST, create a passionate generation of new engineers, is the best antidote to that problem. And he told me he would help me. And he has been on our board and involved with our projects in his heart and in his mind, both analytically and passionately. And he brought to us other great people from this industry, including Tom Stevens, who's also been on our board and has been involved. And it's been unbelievable. But as FIRST started working more and more, the story behind that fact is The kits get more complicated. The robots get more complicated. Just go look at our early years with simple little kits. There was no autonomous mode. There was no programming. There was no sensors. But over time, a lot of people tried to find ways to either make it simpler, make it easier. Even some of our board members. And Francois never wanted to lower that bar. And people inside FIRST would say, well, we can't change to a district model. Why not? Because that's not the way we do it. Why do we do it this way? Because that's the way we always did it. Well, that's not vision. And that's not innovation. But in the end, having vision and having courage and being willing to risk a lot, to innovate, to grow FIRST the way you're growing it, to make it more efficient, to make it more cost effective, it takes a lot of courage. And in the midst of trying to make the new, better, more easily scaled FIRST work, in the middle of all that a few years ago, as we all know, the whole automotive industry had a massive issue, and the whole global economy had an issue, and the whole banking structure of the world was going nuts. And there was one very famous meeting that one of our board members, Tom Stevens, at that time, during that month, the issue was, is General Motors going to go bankrupt or not? The most iconic symbol of engineering in the world after 100 years. What's going to happen? And a lot of other industries were in trouble too, and the banking was in trouble too, but we had a board meeting, and Tom was on our board. And even though there's all those problems, Tom showed up at the champion. He showed up at that board meeting. And a lot of the other board members were saying, well, I don't know if that we can count on GM for the incredible support they've given us year after year. Look. And as they went around the table asking, what are we going to do next year? What do we do next year? I'm paraphrasing, Tom. I might get this a little off. What Tom Stevens told the board of FIRST, when they got to him around the table, he said, what's General Motors going to do with FIRST next year? We're going to double our support, because don't you understand the problem we're all in now can only be solved if we get world-class engineers and innovators. It's the solution to our problem. We have to accelerate the path to making FIRST more successful in more communities, so those communities can give their kids a chance. And from that day forward, people like Francois and Tom Stevens have been the real story. And of course, with people like Gail, secretly in the background, but these people never gave up on the original vision of FIRST. I told Francois, we shouldn't stop until every kid in this country has the opportunity to do something like this. Every kid deserves that opportunity. So, the story is, you people are very lucky to live in a place that has leadership like them, and through them, right up to your governor. Your governor is a great spokesperson. I've asked all the other governors to listen to his State of the State and see how a governor that exercises real leadership and understands real issues responds to FIRST. So I can tell all of you, that's the story. But the opportunity here isn't just to make Michigan continue to grow. The real story here, and the reason I'm excited, is now the rest of our board, the rest of the country, I hope the rest of its governors, are starting to understand that if you do it the right way, if you follow the example of what you're doing in Michigan, the rest of the country can succeed like you. We are showing through what you did and your leadership, we are showing the rest of the country how to do it. More and more areas around the country are adopting the district model. By this time next year, there'll be lots more district models. And I think over the next few years, we're going to continue the path of making FIRST part of all the schools in this country. And I think as you look back at it in a few years when you're off in college and back as mentors from whatever state you happen to be, you will see that this Michigan model is becoming the standard for how FIRST goes and grows. So for doing all of that, I thank you on behalf of the rest of the FIRST community. I thank you for proving that we can do this. And once again, and finally, I thank the university and Tom and Francois and everybody, but mostly you students should be thanking all of them. Have a great time.